Coming to you from his downtown Denver studio, here's the Backstage Jazz Radio Show with your host, Steve Roby.
Hello and welcome to the Backstage Jazz Show. I'm Steve Roby, and my guest today is award-winning pianist and composer Jack Dunlevie. He's here to discuss his residency at Nocturne's Jazz Nightclub and upcoming album. Welcome to Backstage Jazz, Jack.
Glad to be here.
Great. Can we begin by giving our listeners a brief overview of your musical career and your influences?
Well, I went to the Lamont School of Music at DU, and I was originally there for classical piano. And while I was there, I remember playing all the rep that I had memorized at the time for 20, 30 minutes and thinking, I really wish that when I sit down to play that I could just play for as long as I wanted. And that was when I first became interested in improvising. And I was also around jazz for the first time in music school. So I just let the faculty there know that I was interested and they needed more jazz pianists. So they kind of pushed me in the deep end. Director of jazz studies at the time, Lynn Baker, after one meeting with him, just told me I was now in the modal combo and taking lessons with Eric Gunnison. And I just went with it. And Eric is amazing. So studying jazz from the beginning with him was a real privilege. I ended up switching my major to jazz and graduated with that degree. And yeah, that's been my gig. It's playing jazz piano in Denver.
Nice. And who would you say are some of your musical influences along the way?
Pianists, Oscar Peterson, Brad Meldau, Bill Evans, Wynton Kelly. It's tough to calm down. You spend a lot of time with each one, and you kind of have your own major influences. Ahmad Jamal is another big one. I've led a number of residencies at Nocturne in the past, and something that it can be really great for is like creating an area of study for yourself. So I've done the Oscar Peterson record, We Get Requests, with my trio there for 2 months. Got to play that album twice a night for 2 months. It might have been Thursdays. And that's just such a great way to like really dig into something, do a lot of transcription, work on like the emulation side of playing jazz, which obviously is more of an aspect of study than where you want to end up for your own personal voice. But yeah, I found a lot of value doing that. I also did a residency for a couple months playing Ahmad Jamal's Live at the Pershing.
I mentioned at the beginning you have a residency for the month of October at Nocturne in the Rhino District. Who's joining you on stage, and what can fans look forward to at the shows?
Well, bass player Hunter Roberts, he and I have been playing together for, as long as I've been playing jazz. We were in the same graduate class at DU. And then longtime collaborator and close friend Drew Heller on the drums. I've gotten to play with players of that caliber for a long time. I've been very lucky, so it kind of feels like learning to drive in a Lamborghini or something.
Nocturne's a great place to see jazz. And the owner, Scott, really gives a lot of leverage to the players to improvise on kind of themes for their shows. And I really appreciate that as a listener at the club, too.
Yeah, it's an excellent space. I'm also playing there Sundays this month. Just finished with a gig last night, although we have a couple more Sundays coming up with the Taylor Clay Quartet.
Nice.
He's a tenor saxophonist here locally, and we're performing a lot of music that he's composed to modern art. So people like Matisse and Pollock, Clifford Still, whose museum contains almost all of his work here in Denver. So he's composed a bunch of music along to these pieces of visual art. We're performing that music in Nocturne this month as well.
We recently had Taylor on the Backstage Jazz Show, and he was going into great detail for some of those shows and saying that I think their chefs are even doing a special presentation with a meal that would complement both the music and the visuals on the stage too. So, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a real interdisciplinary experience, I guess.
You sent over a few tracks to share with our listeners. What can you tell us about this first one called Bounding Maine?
Well, my good friend and bass player Jean-Luc Davis was one of the first people of like the next generation up from me, local Denver jazz musician, who when I graduated from school started hiring me for gigs and taking me under his wing a little bit. My first gig actually at Nocturne, we're talking a lot about that club, but it's a great club.
Yeah, it's okay.
My first gig there was playing his music, and the scheme for that one was that he was taking alternative rock music mostly from the 90s, and making jazz arrangements of that. So also one of the first jazz albums that I got to record on was his. I think the album is called Bounding Maine. No, it's Tomorrow Today. And this piece, Bounding Maine, is one of his original tunes. And it's, just a cool early example of me getting to record on someone else's music as a sideman.
That's a perfect intro. Let's listen to Bounding Maine here on the Backstage Jazz Show. My guest today is Denver-based musician Jack Dunlevie, and the next song we're going to play is called Apex. What's the backstory with this one, Jack?
This is another sort of early example of my work. This is a tune that I composed. I think it was, I had written a somewhat longer piece and ended up cannibalizing my favorite parts from that to create this tune, Apex. This recording is with one of my closest friends and musical collaborators, Thomas Jennings, on guitar.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a lot of time with him coming over to my house. We lived in the same neighborhood, a few blocks away for a long time. Yeah, so he would come over to my house and we would just improvise and play tunes together and hang out until the wee hours of the morning. So it's a real camaraderie there, and this is sort of an early window into that relationship.
All right. Here's Apex on Backstage Jazz. Jack, I understand you're working on a new album with Drew Heller, who you mentioned earlier, and Kent McLagan. Tell me about the new album.
That's another. It's interesting how your voice sort of changes and you hear different things when you're playing with different people. So with Drew, we both have found playing with each other that we can kind of go in any direction. And he's such a sensitive musician that I always trust that he's going to be there basically no matter what I choose to do. And he also pushes me to like reach for the furthest edges of what I can achieve on the instrument. So there's a great relationship there musically. And then Kent is, again, of an older generation. He may be in his 60s, but he's been around Denver for a long time, and he's played with some really legendary musicians. He is the best in the world at what he does in the bass.
All right.
He's a really kind of free player, and he imagines the role of the bass in a unique way. I think people familiar with music will understand when I say that he very rarely plays on one and very rarely plays the root of the chord. It's a kind of an exciting way to play. It's very just the colors that you get when the bass player is sort of leaning away from the traditional role of the instrument are unique and exciting. So when we play together in that trio with Drew and Kent, it's I don't know, it just seems like kind of a unique voice as a band, and something that we're hoping to document.
Cool. When can we expect the new album, and do you have a working title?
I do not have a working title, but I would say maybe early next year.
Okay. I always find that frustrating when I ask that question. As an author of 3 books, it's like, that's where I start as a working title. But I understand musicians are different than writers. But
well, and I think the words are often secondary. For me, I know a lot of musicians and a lot of people appreciate music for whom lyrics and titles are a real integral part of the experience. And I don't want to downplay their importance, but I do believe that for me that is kind of a secondary thing. So the music's going to come first, and then I'm sure we'll find a appropriate title from there.
Sounds good to me. So where can our listeners find more about your music and your upcoming shows? Do you have a website, or where can I send them?
I'm working on a website, but I will post about my upcoming shows and my schedule on social media. So my Instagram is just my name, and that's probably the best place to stay abreast of where I'm going to be at, playing locally in Denver and occasionally all around the country.
Great. I'll put those links in the show description for this podcast. Just a reminder for our listeners, you can catch the Jack Dunlevie Trio at Nocturnes every Thursday in October. Tickets are available at nocturnejazz.com. You also mentioned you're playing there Sundays too as well, right?
I am, yeah, with the Taylor Clay Quartet.
Hope we can send some listeners over to Nocturnes. Thanks for your time today, Jack, and have a great run at Nocturne.
Yeah, thank you. Great to talk with you.
If you're enjoying the Backstage Jazz Show, we'd love for you to like, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
The Backstage Jazz Show was recorded at Little Raven Studios in downtown Denver, and our producer was Craig Stevens. You can find Backstage Jazz wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to stop by our website, backstage-jazz.com, where all past and current episodes have been archived. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email us at backstagejazz@fastmail.com. This is Steve Roby. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Backstage Jazz.
You've been listening to the Backstage Jazz Show. Join us next time for more great jazz and interviews with your favorite musicians.